Hi, Roxy Keller here again as I continue to bake my way through the Great British Baking Show challenges. I am moving on to week 2 of season 5 from 2017, which is Biscuit Week. So the British call what we call cookies, they call biscuits. They seem to have a slightly different idea about really snappy, crispy biscuits being called biscuits and cookies being softer, but I'm not sure that's always consistent. Anyway, the challenge today is to make 24 sandwich cookies, and they can be anything you like, 2 cookies with some sort of a cream filling in the middle. And the recipe I'm using is from this book, and it's published by Bake from Scratch. That's a magazine that has really great recipes. They have a magazine that comes out once a month, and then they publish these books for each of the year's worth of recipes. One of the things I like about it is that there is a photograph of every single recipe. And the recipe I'm doing is called Crème Fraîche Sandwich Cookies. And crème fraîche is something in between sour cream and cream cheese. I'm going to use cream cheese as a substitute. I think you can get crème fraîche in a lot of grocery stores, but I have cream cheese, so I'm just going to use that. The cream cheese actually goes in the cookie itself, and then the cream in the middle, I have some of my cream cheese buttercream frosting left over from the gnome illusion cake I made in the previous episode. And so I'm just going to use that to fill my cookies along with a raspberry jam. So let's get to it. As with all cookies and cakes, we want to mix the wet and dry ingredients separately. So our wet ingredients will begin with 3 sticks of butter. I'm using salted butter. 3 sticks of salted butter, or 1.5 cups, or about 340 grams. That's at room temperature. 180 grams of cream cheese. Because crème fraîche is slightly tangier than cream cheese, I'm going to substitute by adding 1 tablespoon of white vinegar. I'm going to beat this with the paddle attachment for about 2 minutes until well combined. Now it's time to add vanilla, and I have kind of a funny story about this vanilla. I searched online for a type of vanilla that is supposed to be the best for bringing out the flavor in baked goods, because as I mentioned before, vanilla can lose its flavor when it's exposed to heat. But this particular one, called Nielsen Massey Madagascar Bourbon, is the one that everybody says will give your baked goods a really strong vanilla flavor. Well, what's interesting about this is an 8-ounce bottle. It costs about $35, which is insane. I got this one at Whole Foods for a little bit less than that. I think it was 26, but I know that's still crazy, but I just thought I'd try it. 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. I just put 2 teaspoons. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Scrape down. Now you might be wondering, because I have a paddle attachment with this extra wiper blade on it, it does help with scraping down the sides, but the very bottom still needs to be scraped, so it doesn't really save you much. Sugar is typically considered part of the wet ingredients, and this recipe calls for confectioner sugar. So I'm going to sift 180 grams of powdered sugar. Since I am going to pipe out using a piping bag the sandwich cookie halves, I want to make sure it's well sifted. I double checked before putting this in, and it's not 180 grams of powdered sugar. It's actually only 120 grams of confectioner's sugar. For the dry ingredients, I need 3 cups or 375 grams of all-purpose flour. Again, I'm going to sift it just to make sure I don't have any bits that won't go through the pipe tip. The last ingredient is 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. Now I'll add the dry ingredients, which is just flour and cornstarch, to the wet ingredients, and I use this shield. It helps a little bit, but it's not perfect. But it's better than nothing. Remember, we just want to mix the dry ingredients until everything is wet and not overmix, because we don't want to develop any gluten. The dough is mixed, and with some cookies, you take spoonfuls and drop them on your baking sheet, and some you roll out and cut. These we actually will put through a piping bag, and the recipe calls for a Wilton 2D piping tip. This one is called a 1M. They're very similar. The 2D is a little bit more closed, but this is the one I have, and I'm sure it will work fine. So I've prepared my baking pan. The paper underneath is actually used to make macarons, but the recipe for this calls for a 2.5-inch circle. These circles are 2-inch, and I'm just going to make them a little bit smaller. I think they'll be better that way anyway. I put the circle template with a piece of parchment paper over top, and I've used a small piece of Scotch tape on the parchment paper so that it won't move around when I pipe the dough on. I just have to remember to take that off before I put it in the oven. So now I need to put about half of the batter into a piping bag. I have a 12-inch piping bag, and I'm not going to use the coupler because I'm only going to use this tip. The recipe says that it will make 18 2.5-inch sandwich cookies. The challenge for the Great British Baking Show was that the bakers make 24. I might be able to get 24 by making them 2-inch, and this baking sheet will hold 24, so that will be half of the sandwich, and I have one more baking pan like this ready to be piped. I'm using this 12-inch piping bag. Probably could use a 14-inch, but as long as this stays closed, it should be fine. Let's see. So some I started from the outside and finished on the inside, and this one I started on the inside and finished on the outside. I think that's going to look better. So I'm going to start in the middle and then make a circle around. Someday I hope to attend a class by Brian Hart Hoffman, who is the baker and the publisher of Bake from Scratch. Maybe I can learn how to get those tips, the finishing, just perfect. I believe he's in Birmingham, Alabama, so I'd have to take a trip down to see my sister who lives near there. Maybe I could visit. Well, if I did in fact put half the batter in the bag, I made 24, so looks like I'll be able to make at least 24 more. Taping the side. Brian Hart Hoffman from Bake From Scratch also has lots of online videos you can watch, some of which you can be part of while he's making the videos, a little online school. When you add batter, when there's still batter in the tip, you want to squeeze that out because there's a big air pocket that forms between the previous batter and this batter, and if you don't, then you'll just get that air pocket when you're trying to pipe out your cookies. This is rather difficult to squeeze. It's very thick, but if you keep twisting as you go along, it tightens the bag, makes it a little bit easier to squeeze. Well, that's 24. Have a little bit of dough left. I'll just have to do those a little bit later. Okay, so now these need to go in the refrigerator for 30 minutes. And while this is in the refrigerator, I'll make the raspberry jam to go in the middle. To make the raspberry filling, I start with 350 grams of fresh raspberries into a saucepan, 105 grams of granulated white sugar, the zest of 1 lemon, lemon juice from half a lemon, eighth cup of water. I'm going to put that on the stove and get it to boiling, and then turn it down and let it simmer for about 10 to 15 minutes. While the raspberry filling is heating up, I'm going to take my cream cheese buttercream frosting that I set out. I had it in the refrigerator with a piece of plastic wrap over it, and I'm going to put that in the mixer just to get it nice and well blended. And I think I'm going to add a little bit of pink food coloring just to give the cookies a little bit more color. Okay, it's been about 30 minutes since I put the cookies in the refrigerator, and my oven is still preheating. It's not quite at 350, so I'm going to wait just a couple minutes. And in the meantime, the raspberry mixture is nice and heated, boiled for about 13 minutes, simmered for about 13 minutes, and now I'm going to strain out the seeds. If you've ever watched the holiday baking shows or other cake shows on TV, you might know Duff Goldman, and two of the many things I've learned from him are to always strain your seeds and toast your nuts. So I always do both of those. So in order to get the good stuff out of here, leave the seeds behind. Just need to press it with a spoon until all of the good juice comes through. Some of that raspberry flesh is fine too. That's good stuff. We just don't want the seeds. Lots of good stuff stuck to the outside that I can scrape off. Just don't do it with the same spoon you were mashing with. I've done that one time. And you just get seeds back in your mix. A few seeds get through, but not many. I have seeds and pulp left in here. It's good for the compost pile. My oven is now preheated, so I'm going to put the first tray of cookies in. Remembering to remove this tape. It says to bake for 14 to 16 minutes until the edges start to brown just a little bit, so I'll check them at 14 minutes. The raspberries are now strained, and now I need to add the thickener, which in this recipe calls for 3 tablespoons of cornstarch and 3 tablespoons of water. So I mix that in a bowl first so that I can make sure it's very well mixed. I've never had great luck with using just cornstarch to thicken a jelly or jam, so I'm also going to add a sheet of gelatin. I probably could add more than 1 sheet, but I'm going to just add 1. I don't want it to be too jello-y. First, I need to bloom the gelatin, so you just put it in cold water. All that does is make it soft, and as soon as it's soft, then I can add it to the strawberry jelly. So the strained raspberry sauce, I washed out my saucepan. I'm going to add the sauce back to the pan. It smells amazing. I'm going to add the cornstarch slurry, which is 3 tablespoons of cornstarch and 3 tablespoons of water. My gelatin has bloomed. Basically now it's just flimsy. I'm going to add that and now put it back on the stove top, bring it to a boil, and then let it simmer for just a couple of minutes. So 14 minutes was perfect for these to bake. There's just little bits of brown, and you might have noticed that there were no eggs in this recipe, and because of that, the cookies don't spread at all. It's more of a crumbly cookie texture, and that's perfect for a sandwich cookie because you want the cookie to be soft so that when you bite through it, it doesn't squish the cream out. It actually bites and gives you a bite of the cookie and of the cream. So I'm going to put this on the cooling tray, and I've already put the next pan in. Okay, so the cookies are cooling. The raspberry filling is in the refrigerator, setting up, hopefully. And the buttercream, I've colored it pink, and it's ready for the filling. So once the raspberry filling is set, I should be able to put the sandwich cookies together. Okay, so I have the cookies that are cooled, and of course, these are supposed to be 24 identical sandwich cookies. These are not going to be identical. They're going to be pretty close, but a couple of them are larger than others. So here's a size, here's one slightly smaller, but I'm just going to try to match 2 that are the same size. And so the idea is to turn it over to the flat side, take my pink cream cheese buttercream filling, and pipe a little bit of a circle around the edge. Now, the bakers probably would not have had time to do both a filling, a frosting type filling, and a raspberry type fruity filling, because this does seem to take a little time to set up. I'm going to leave a little space for the raspberry filling, and hopefully it won't just sink right into the cookie. We'll see. I'll take a piping bag. This can be one of the thinner ones, and fill it with some raspberry filling. It's not nearly as thick or set as I thought it would be. I probably could have put 3 more sheets of gelatin in there. I think that's what I'll do next time. Since it is quite thin, I'm going to cut a pretty small hole and squeeze a bit of that inside. I'll just do a couple of them so that I can see if that's going to spill out. And I'm not sure if I need the second layer frosting, but let's try it. Quite pretty. The ones in the book were apparently done for Christmas, so they rolled them in a red and green sprinkles, but I'm going to roll it in a bit of red. But I think the frosting needs to, it doesn't look very good. I'm going to try just sprinkling it on. Oh, this is floating all over the place because of the raspberry. Well, I think that one had too much filling in it, so I'm going to try a little bit different. The barrier for the frosting. Raspberry filling, much less this time. That's pretty good. I think I'll do them like that. It doesn't seem to be squeezing out of these, so I'll do it like that. So what I'm doing is putting a ring of the frosting on each side, and then just putting the raspberry filling on one side. And then putting a few of the red sugar on the outside. Now I can start doing it in bulk instead of one at a time. By the way, I'm using a number 20 Wilton tip. It's a star tip, and there are different sizes of star tip. This is kind of a medium of the ones I have. After I shake off a bit of the sugar, I'm going to put them on my display board. I don't have to use the one that's squeezed out. because you remember I had extra cookie dough, I made a couple of extra sandwich cookies, so I can just use these and still have 24. If you're wondering what I do with all of these baked goods, well, I mentioned that I'm a botanist. I am a professor at a university, and there are plenty of other faculty, staff, and students who don't get a lot of homemade baked goods. So I don't have any trouble finding someone who would like to try these. So my plan eventually is to start asking them, maybe put out a survey so they can anonymously tell me what they think about some of my baked goods. So I hope to start doing that. So here they are. And I have some raspberry filling left over. This will be great on some vanilla ice cream. Perfect timing.
Are you recording?
Do you like to try it?
Sure. Let me put this up down.
Okay.
What did you make this time? Hello, everybody. Let me grab a chair. 6'3", I'm too tall for the frame. What did you make?
So these are cream cheese sandwich cookies with a cream cheese American buttercream frosting and a raspberry filling.
Sounds really good.
Okay. Try one?
Yes. All right. So now, which one should I try? This way. Huh? All right. Let's give it the old taste. Filling delicious.
You taste the raspberry?
I do. And the cookie crumbles in my mouth. Not a shortbread cookie should. I gotta have another bite.
You can have the whole thing. You're not a judge. You don't have to try 12 different
That's delicious.
people.
Good job, man.
Thanks.
All right. I'm taking this with me.
Okay, so next time is the technical challenge for Biscuit Week or Cookie Week, and they have challenged the bakers to make fortune cookies. So this will be something new for me, as these were, and I'll see you next time.